Save the Semantics, episode 323. It is June 14th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Saturday afternoon, a day after Game 4 of the NBA Finals. It's been a really great series so far. I'll just say that right off the bat. I mean, it's just been such a breath of fresh air. I mean, these whole playoffs have been awesome, and it's leading up to what feels like. Well, we're gonna get at least two more games, which I'm incredibly happy about. But I would be even more happy if this ends up in a game 7 situation. But so far, just like the kind of the back and forth and the fact that it never really has felt like, I guess aside from game 2, it doesn't really feel like either team necessarily has control over the series. You could argue that, so OKC won last night in a pretty, just a real grinded out fashion. But, despite them sort of regaining control of home court, it does not feel like, and especially with kind of last night's performance where, I mean, they hit like three threes and they had 10 assists. SGA had 0 assists last night. So they did not perform very well. And, you could argue that next, the game on Monday is going to be much more of a, back to, potential back to form for the Thunder going back home. I mean, you would assume that they have a lot more confidence now, but it just it hasn't really felt like they've hit kind of their potential in terms of, like, despite, they've had games yesterday and game 3, all of, their kind of, their big 3, if you want to call it that, of SGA, J-Dub, and Chet. They all performed really well in both 3 and 4, but it just has not felt like the supporting cast has not really risen to the occasion, other than Alex Caruso, right? The bench has not been very good in the last 2 games, and so if there is a more well-rounded performance by this Thunder team, I think there is more of this expectation that it could happen in game 5, right? But I do think that Indiana has really shown themselves, especially just in terms of their, them clicking on offense and finding ways to limit SGA as much as they can. They found some kind of formula, although the Thunder strategy late in game 4 was to kind of switch, have Neesmith switch on to SGA instead of Nemhard, and that kind of resulted in some really, timely and significant buckets. But regardless of that, I think that the Pacers have really found what works in terms of their kind of defensive measures, right? It was really on the offensive side that it actually started to falter yesterday, because of what the Thunder were able to do on their defensive end, right? You had kind of Lou Dort really pressuring Halliburton. There was really, Pacers just could not get they couldn't get really quality shots up late into the fourth quarter. So that really limited their ability to be able to create. So I think kind of what, in comparison to what like the Pacers did in game 1, in which they were, they had their historic comeback. OKC kind of had a similar version of that to, a much lesser extent, because of, just like, it wasn't like this offensive barrage. It was kind of like very intentional, it's just like a very intentional methodology of kind of the two-man game between him, SGA, and J-Dub that allowed them to kind of, get back into the game and then gain control of the game as well. Chet had some really huge like putbacks in the fourth quarter as well, which kind of helped them get back and, kind of close the gap of that lead. So I thought it was just like a really, it is so interesting kind of comparing the style in which both teams play, right? Like the frenetic and fast-paced nature of the Pacers offense, and the Pacers just, their general philosophy, and then the Thunder, which is just like play as hard as you can and just really just, just kind of out physical the Pacers in their kind of own way. So I think just like this clash of styles has been really interesting to watch, and the way in which that they've gone about winning has been, very different as well. I think, sort of the discussion yesterday, I would say a lot of it, which was really frustrating to kind of see, because I honestly didn't think the refereeing was like all that bad. There were definitely some questionable moments there. I get it, this whole Scott Foster thing. I totally get that. I had a whole I've had a whole like, rant about him and like the refereeing and all that stuff. So I totally understand people being wary of that kind of thing, but I really don't think that it had the impact to the game as others maybe saw it. Like I was viewing this very, and it also helps that it would be fun to watch Indiana win this series, but I'm as a neutral fan who has just really enjoyed this series overall, I just want to see this one go as long as it can. So I kind of was rooting for the Thunder this game, just so that we can at least guarantee game 6, right? But I really didn't feel like it completely like turned the game on its head or anything like that. I get it. There were some really questionable calls throughout the game, but it just was not, I just don't think it was to the level of impact that others made it out to be. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, some maybe it's like, I don't know. Like, you could argue that there were maybe some like ticky-tack fouls that were made to SGA, but upon replay, it was really clear that there was contact. Like Neesmith making contact on his shot. So I just don't think it's like, I don't know. I thought it was okay, right? And just like the standard of NBA reffing is just not, I get it. It's not of like the highest quality. Like we should absolutely expect more from them, but I don't think it was as bad as other, like I was reading like, man, like both like the, the main NBA subreddit and then like the Pacers subreddit. I get the Pacers subreddit a little bit more, but people were just freaking out, and it's like, man, were we even watching the same game? Like it was not like some of these people have never seen, I feel like some of them have never watched like an NBA game before. Like, dude, like there have been so many worse, like, poorly officiated, games. And I know and I understand that this is so much more of a high stakes game, but I just don't think it was, I really don't think it was that bad. And just seeing some of the posts, like there's like multiple posts on like the Pacers subreddit. It's like, this game made me lose my faith in human. And like it's like, you just relax. Like I relax. I know what it's like to like put your entire self into a sports team. I've done that before. When I've done that when I was like younger, and look, just take a step back. First of all, you still have two, three more chances to win this series. It is tied up. You are tied up against the best team in the NBA. It is 2-2. You've won a game in Oklahoma City. It doesn't mean that you can still win a game in Oklahoma City. You could win 2 more games in Oklahoma City, right? So I think look, it's tough. Like, sure, maybe the momentum swings back in favor of Oklahoma City, but I don't think like the Pacers should feel any less confident. Like, they had them for the majority of game 4. But you just had some incredible shot making by the MVP, and it's hard to kind of deny that. You know what I mean? Like, in this instance, you had the best player just kind of rise to the occasion, and that sometimes that just happens. Like, I just don't think it's it's just like this devastating. And it was the same way for like game 3 of the Thunder, when the Thunder lost, like just kind of seeing some of the commentary and reaction from like Thunder fans. It was just like, that's it. This is one of the, it was like, this is the most disastrous, like, and it's like, dude, it's 2-1. It's 2-1. It is not like, if it gets to 3-1, yeah, absolutely. And this was kind of that gut check game, but it's 2-1. There have been so many instances of teams that have won, coming down 2-1. They won in the Denver series. Like, I look, the stakes and everything are so much higher in this playoff, like in this, in this final situation, because it is, this is the last, this is it, right? But you just gotta, like, it's easy to overreact to every single game, and I've done that, like, absolutely. Like, I was talking about, like, oh, what if the Pacers won, this if they somehow went on to win this series, like, would this be considered one of the most, like, incredible playoff runs in NBA history, just because of the unlikelihood of them getting to this position? And it's like, we're jumping too far ahead. It's fun to speculate. It's fun to, kind of lay those expectations and think about and predict and all that stuff. But ultimately, where we stand right now, it is not like the series is far from over. It is just, if the Thunder win, okay, they got one more game in Indiana, and then you got this back and forth going on. Like, it's very easy to overreact, but the series is not, it's not over. It's not over. This is going to go at least 6, and I'm hoping this goes for 7. So I think if you're an Indiana fan, I think you should have some faith that this could potentially go to 7 games. And I think that's an incredible feat. And in that game 7 situation, like, this is like the most pressure cooker. The pressure is going to be on the Thunder, right? Like, if they go to game 7, this is going to be on the Thunder. Like, if you're Indiana, you kind of have the cards, right? Like, I don't think the Thunder don't want to go to game 7. I don't think so, right? Like sure, it's like at home or whatever, but fans are going to be nervous. It is going to be the most high stakes game that their franchise has ever been a part of. Like, I think if you're like in Indiana's position, if you can somehow push this to 7, or if they can win in 6, obviously that's like a little less likely, but anything is possible. Like, absolutely anything is possible. Some other highlights, some other notes from this game, from game 4. It was like really, I don't know. It really felt, I kind of had this feeling that the Thunder were going to be able to kind of crawl back. I think at the end of the third quarter, when I think it was J-Dub who hit a jumper to cut the lead to 7, I thought that was really significant. Once he did that, like, despite the fact that Indiana had just like full control of this game up until the fourth quarter, I think that little momentum shift was kind of what led to the Thunder being able to kind of really crawl back into this game and take the lead down the stretch. But I just think that if you're looking at this game, you got some incredible contributions from Obi Toppin. Like, this could have been this, if they had won, this would have been the Obi Toppin game. Like, he had some incredible moments. He was just everywhere. He had those like 2 3-pointers in like the third quarter, I believe, which was like a huge kind of like creating separation. Like the Thunder kind of started to come back, I think, in the third quarter or so, and then Obi Toppin had those two threes, and you're like, oh shit, okay, this might be it. A little bit. I never like fully bought into that because I just feel like the Thunder are that good. But this could have potentially been kind of like that Obi Toppin game. Siakam had an incredible like first half of this game. Like he was really putting like making his presence known. But in the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter, like he just completely was like, I don't know, they just kind of iced him out. Like the Pacers kind of iced him out. Like they didn't really involve him in any actions, and I was like, I just don't like. Why wouldn't you? Like, why would you kind of go away from him so much? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of it was kind of like Tyrese trying to, like, shake, like, Chet or, whatever big was, like, guarding him. And that didn't really work out. Like, why wouldn't you try to at least involve Siakam, who had, who was on pace for, like, a 30-point game? Like, why wouldn't you try to get him involved in some of the action? Like, try to... I think some of that ISO where he was like ISOing on a mismatch, that was sort of working in the first half, but maybe they went away from it because they realized it just was not like I don't know, maybe they just thought it wasn't going to be as effective if they were to like draw the double. Like they were heavily pressuring, the kind of like, above the arc. Like they were just like not getting anything. The Pacers were not getting anything into the paint. So maybe there was just kind of this fear of even trying to initiate something through Siakam, because maybe they felt that there was going to be like an immediate, double. I don't know, but it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of strange. So like this could have been like a great Siakam game, and it just didn't. It was a great first half, but overall his lack of contribution in the second half was very telling. Like Halliburton still had a good game as well. He didn't have like a great game, but he definitely was making some, like his passing, and especially kind of his connection that he had with Toppin was really like kind of special, and you could really kind of feel sort of what that energy kind of brought to that building and that the arena and stuff. So I think that he had his moments, but it just never translated to, like it was almost like uncharacteristic during this run, especially when they have been such a clutch team, throughout these playoffs. They just could not execute down the stretch because of the pressure that OKC was putting on them. So it was like an uncharacteristic, just kind of this lack of ability to produce down the stretch, and I thought that was very telling. Some other notes. I think it was that Ben Mathurin is that was like one of the worst and most like disastrous, because he had to come in due to Neesmith fouling out at the kind of the end of the game. But I feel like he just was this was absolutely not his game. He had like an awesome game 3, but he is just one of those players, it seems like, that cannot consistently, there's a reason why he's coming off the bench versus starting. And this game was like a huge indication of that. He had just like one of the most disastrous like final minutes of a game where he missed 3 free throws. He had 2 fouls like away from the ball when they were passing it like inbounds. He had a steal, but I guess that was like kind of the same instance where he couldn't convert the free throws. But man, just like an absolute blunder. And that was pretty. I can't imagine just like the whiplash going from his game 3 performance to today. Like one of the heroes of game 3 to kind of really one of the one of the worst moments of the game is such a, I don't know, is such like a such a turn of events. But that's just how it goes sometimes, you know what I mean? Game 5, I'm hoping, you know, it's, I feel like, I do feel like OKC has kind of the edge a little bit in this instance. And the hope is that like Indiana hasn't like faltered in their confidence after this game, because they had them. It just happens that like with like a few adjustments that were made by the Thunder, they were able to kind of, take control. And then, you had SGA, but like if they're able to contain him like they did in these last two games, especially like in the first half by Nemhard, I don't know. I think you could really see some success if the Thunder start hitting their threes. If they hit like anything like above average, yeah, then it's going to be pretty tough for the Pacers to kind of win, because like this was not a good game by the Thunder, right? Like SGA had 35, but he had no assists. He just couldn't like get his teammates involved. His other, whoever he was passing to just were not, capitalizing on their shots. But if they're even able to, if like the bench kind of steps up, like they did in game two, yeah, I think it's gonna be tough for Indiana to be able to kind of counter that if they get kind of the full, if they get like a full sort of, uh, full result from this Thunder team. I think it's a little hard for me to, I don't know, but you never know with Indiana. Like they've just been it's been such an unpredictable kind of roller coaster with them that you never know. Like, this series has been unpredictable. But I'm very excited to kind of see how that looks in game five. But I do think the Thunder are going to win game five. And then I hope that the Pacers can win it in game six so they can push this to game seven. I yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of repeating myself at this point, but it's been really like, I'm curious, like once this ends and these playoffs end, like how we're gonna kind of look back. It's obviously gonna come down to who ultimately wins, right? Here's something that I feel that I've kind of neglected a little bit, especially in terms of looking back on other series and legacy and those kinds of things, is sort of remembering. It's easy to remember the champions, right? It's very easy to remember the championships and those kinds of things, but I do think it's worth remembering, moments, certain series, and kind of what happened in those series, right? I look back on like the 2015 championship run by the Warriors. Sorry, 20 was it 20? Yeah, 2015. Their first championship in 50 years, whatever. And I had a hard time kind of like, I remember it was like what the Pelicans was like the first round with Anthony Davis, and then I think it was the Spurs, and then the Grizzlies, I think, right? But it's a little muddled. Like I'm kind of no, it might was it the Jazz? I don't remember what the second round was. But yeah, I think, I remember, the series against Cleveland, right? I remember winning against Cleveland, and Iguodala getting the Finals MVP, and that kind of thing. But I think it is worth recognizing, not even just like the Warriors run as well, but just understanding kind of the landscape of the league at that time, right? Because this was right before kind of the KD Warriors shift and everything, but it was kind of the era, right? 2014 was LeBron's last season with the Heat before he went back to Cleveland, and that was a pretty tremendous moment. And just kind of that shift in power in the Eastern Conference. And just kind of looking back on just like all the other teams that were kind of in the mix, I think it's for like historical purposes of just kind of looking back and just understanding the nuance of what the league was at the time and how teams operated, and how different things were in terms of like schematics and all those kinds of things. I think it's worth revisiting and remembering like different series, right? Series where the champion wasn't involved, right? Like, I think these past playoffs, Indiana's going to be kind of the it's going to be their story for the most part. Even if they lose, like this will be, like the 2023 Heat run was incredibly memorable, and that was kind of their story. And then you got the Pacers. Obviously, it's a little hard to like deny that, absolutely, but you still got like all these other moments kind of sprinkled throughout. Like you had the Clippers and Nuggets first round series, which was incredible. Like that was, one of the best series during these playoffs. You had, and then I'm gonna remember the first round series the Warriors had with the Rockets. Like that's gonna be, even though like it ended poorly with the Steph injury in the Minnesota run. I can still appreciate that part, right? And I still want to appreciate that part because it's so easy to get caught up in the discussions of like, oh, what is it about legacy and all of these things. And it's like sometimes it's just like fun to look back, recognize that it wasn't this momentous and like, like just like this like huge occasion, but I'm gonna remember game 7 like Buddy Hield, right? I'm gonna remember like the disappointment I felt when they were going to game 7. Like that was like that was such like a that was honestly like a huge, like I really felt this like pit, you know what I mean? Honestly, maybe akin to how Pacers fans feel right now, right? I was like, damn, I do not want to go to game 7 in Houston, and that it worked out. And I don't know, like the Minnesota series is like a what if, but I'm not gonna be super like it's kind of expected, right? We were able to steal game 1, and the rest of the series was kind of a wash, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I'll do like a full retrospective once the finals wrap up. But I just in regards to not only looking back on these playoffs, but also looking back on the various other playoffs that have happened over the course of the many years of the NBA's existence. I think it's worth discussing and looking back on, right? I think it's easy to kind of wash away history with the victors, right? I mean, that's just that's just kind of history in general, but it's worth examining some of the other aspects of it as well. So I think, you know, if I have some time on my hands, that might be something that I may kind of look back on and, kind of dig into a little bit, just because like I haven't, like, it's been a while, but I haven't like revisited kind of like older and like the fondest memories I have of basketball was when I first started watching the Warriors back in like 2008, 2009. Steph's rookie year, when I had no idea who anybody was. And just like, just being like being disappointed that the Lakers are going to win like back-to-back championships, right? Like those kinds of things. But I have fond memories of just like those teams with like Corey Maggette and like Anthony Randolph and CJ Watt, like all these, obviously Monte. So I kind of want to do that with my team, absolutely, but I do kind of want to apply that to other teams as well, and kind of review kind of the history and how they got to, wherever they are now. I think it's worth revisiting, because I think it's fun. It's fun to kind of go back and view trivia and have a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like if I get like, if I play one of those like quiz games, Immaculate Grid or whatever, I'll be pretty good. Like I'll have a better understanding of the teams that existed before, and a little bit better of like the history of the NBA, right? Because really, for the most part, like outside of maybe a little bit of 90s basketball with the Jordan Bulls, like my knowledge is really limited to the time that I really started watching, right? Which has been the last, 17 years, 16 years. And there has existed a whole plethora of, history before and in between as well. So I think it's just worth revisiting. It's just been something that I've been kind of thinking about, right? The teams that are sort of lost to history due to not winning a championship, really, is what it kind of comes down to. But yeah, that's just been something on my mind. Recently have really started to kind of get back into Xenoblade X. I've just been doing just like these kind of, basic smaller missions, and just kind of like messing around with the world, and just filling out the map, and those kinds of things, and that's been fun. Like I think casually playing this game has been one of my joys. I I've mentioned that I wanted to kind of get back into the story, which I will eventually, but I think just like this game is really designed for you to take your time with it, because of just how many different, mechanics and how many different types of modes of gameplay that you can kind of employ, right? Like you could just explore and just like go around the world, and just sort of marvel at the vistas. You could do like bounty missions where you go out and kill monsters. Like there's so many things that you can kind of do, and just like explore the world and all that kind of thing, that the eventually you'll probably run out of things to do, but you could just, even before getting into kind of the main story of things, like you really just you can kind of do this at your own pace. And I've really, I think I sometimes feel quick to want to move on to the next thing. It really depends on the game, obviously, and sometimes I feel justified for that. Like sometimes it's like, all right, maybe it's time to move on. And maybe, who knows, maybe I'll feel that way next week. It's like, all right, maybe we can move on to, maybe we can speed up the story a little bit. But right now I'm okay with just taking, my time and leisure with this game. I just don't feel, and I can kind of go back to it whenever I want to, you know what I mean? Like I have, like, if I want to see the number reach 100%, like if I want to fill out and do everything, I can absolutely do that, like in just other times. So I have this kind of at the back of my head that I can come back to this game whenever I want. So like, even if I don't, proceed with the story at this time, I can still do that, right? It's something that I've, like taking a step back if I feel tired or maybe even burnt out from a game. I mean, that's what I did with Outer Wilds, and it worked out, right? Like I took like a break from the game because I was frustrated by certain parts of the game, and trying to like figure out a puzzle and stuff, and just taking a step back and doing like maybe using some guides here and there. Like there's no fault, or there's no failure in doing that, right? Like you can kind of do whatever you want when playing a game. And then eventually reaching kind of the end of that game made me appreciate it more. It's not like my favorite game by any means, but I do understand the how much importance it can hold with someone. So yeah, so it's just like taking your time. Like it's not, like, games are not meant to be this kind of like achievement list, even though I do enjoy some of that aspect, right? I do enjoy filling out a list and that kind of thing. It sort of like, tickles that part of my brain that you know that that kind of I like. So it's just about of like, just like finding what works and not treating games as kind of this thing where you have to do this thing. You don't have to play a game, right? I've taken a pretty big break from Final Fantasy 12. I just don't have like this really intention of going back to it anytime soon. I just don't have that kind of desire. But maybe, who knows, maybe in like a year from now, maybe I will have that desire. And once I kind of maybe get kind of back into that world and have a better understanding of like the gameplay mechanics and those kinds of things, like maybe I'll be able to kind of enjoy it further and enjoy it deeper, you know what I mean? So it's okay to like kind of put those things to the side, because you'll be able to come back to them later. And this applies with a lot of things that you may consider to be entertainment. It's never that serious, right? And that's something, that's kind of the philosophy that I've tried to employ when enjoying games, because it's like I get caught up with whatever work or just other things, and I get busy, and maybe I neglect some of the things. Maybe I had like a goal in mind where I wanted to play a certain number of games. I'm not, I know that I'm pretty, far from what I was able to achieve last year. Like I played like a good amount of games, like really up until this point, like the halfway point of last year. And I was pretty happy with that kind of progress. But, this year's just one of those down years where I'm not able to do as much. And that's okay. There will be other times in the future where I can, you know, where I can kind of focus my attention on playing more games. But yeah, that's just kind of where I am at. I guess like a quick kind of switch to tidbit that I sort of overheard. So in regards to like the battery stuff, I was thinking about, just like thinking about, because I mostly play handheld. They said like it's like two-ish, 2.5 hours for, handheld play. Honestly, that's not that bad. It's not great, but also in a way it might be good for me, because like I don't even really play super long sessions like that anymore. Like that is kind of like the max of the amount of hours that I play, like when I do kind of sit down and really want to engage. So it's really not that bad. Right, and especially if it's like at the end of at the end of like a work day or whatever, it's like, yeah, a couple hours is like all that I can really for the most part put in. So it's like, is that really that much of a, you know an issue? It's only if I'm like doing like super long game sessions, but at that point it's just like, all right, maybe I should just play docked instead, right? So just thinking about that a little bit. It's not as much of a as much of like a turn off for me. So I think if I, when I do eventually get it, I think it's not going to be the end of the world. I think it'll be okay. And I've been watching some reviews and like, kind of like, more of like a detailed look at the system, and it does look really good. I guess like another thing that I'm a little, I don't know, I'm not like super concerned, but it's just maybe one thing to note is the size, right? Like that is like it does seem to be a pretty big change in size. Luckily, like my hands are fairly, I think they're like decently sized. So I think I would be okay. If it's for like someone with smaller hands, it might be a bit tricky. So I am curious to see like how people because I've seen like most of like the reviewers that I've seen have been guys, and they've been like, oh, this feels like a lot better. But yeah, I am curious for others how that kind of fit feels, especially like in handheld mode. But yeah, I think I'm not as just thinking about it a little bit more. The battery thing is not as much of a thing as a concern. But yeah, I think the the games, the just some of the other stuff with regarding like I guess like storage maybe it's like a bit of a it might not hold as much storage as I thought it would as I thought it would, considering like the sizes of games that you might need to like download as well. That's like kind of an issue, right? As Nintendo is like shifting towards more digital games, right? How much can you store in your library due to like limited, space? Like I don't know. That might be something worth thinking about. But yeah, just a little pondering. Obviously I'm not going to get it yet. If when I make that decision, like I will really be confident in getting it. Like this should not be one of those things where it's like an impulse purchase like I've done with games, right? Like this is something that I'll have to really think a lot about. And right now I'm just happy with my OG Switch, even if it is can be a bit finicky and the Joy-Cons are not the best. But it's okay. It is what it is. It's worth practicing a little bit of patience. Anyways, yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode. I'll talk about next time I record. It'll probably be on either Monday or Tuesday. Tuesday, just talking about the game 5 of the finals and maybe some other things. But yeah, until then, thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.